Well, good afternoon, everybody. I can't see any faces just yet, so I'll just wait for the cameras to come on before I start. There's one. Hi, Sam. Sonia's here. Who else we got? We've got Dimitrina. Hello. Hey. I've got Citizens Advice Bureau. Hello. Whereabouts are you, Citizens Advice Bureau? Oh, we can't hear from you. It's okay. Don't worry. Maybe.
Oh, hi, Mike. Gibraltar. Hi.
Oh, you're in Jib, are you? Hello.
Yeah. Hi. Hi.
Oh, how you doing?
How you doing, Mike?
Oh, yeah, I recognize you. Of course I do on the.
You're sporting a beard these days.
Right. Okay. How we change, how we change. Louise,
Yes.
yeah. A few more cameras would be nice. Good to see you. It is an interactive thing we're doing. All right. Well, I'm Dr. Mike Talbot. I run UK Mediation, and we do this resolution roundtable every now and again as an opportunity for you to bring along case material, to talk about cases you worked on, to get my two penneth of input, and to hear from your peers, or the people who are on the webinar as well, about their ideas or thoughts or reflections about cases that you're working on and case material. The overall aim with this is to improve how we do mediations. It's to look at best practice. It's to look at all of our professional development. It's to talk about how we can best apply the mediation model to a wide variety of situations. And what I enjoy with these is the breadth of work that we hear about when people come along here and say, I've got this case, I've got that case. So you're very welcome to join us. We got about 40 minutes, usually wrap up around about 20 to 1 UK time. Um, when you are presenting a case or talking about a case, and it's all about you bringing material, I'm not going to bring any material here today. It's all about what you bring. Um, Anonymize the participants, don't use names. Be very careful to try not to identify where they're from, which organization. And a good way to do all of that is to think, supposing the participants were here today, would they know that you were talking about them? So we just got to be careful. So even though you're talking party one, party two, to anonymize the individuals, if you then said, and the supermarket where they work has had a push on nectar cards this week. Well, we straight away know more or less where they work, and you could probably figure out, and anybody who worked for that supermarket might figure out, oh, it's those two. So be very, very careful that we don't identify people, please. And then we can talk freely about the case. So I'm interested to hear, and I'm sure all the rest of you would be interested to hear from one another about what you were presented with in terms of a dispute, what you did in terms of decision making around taking on the mediation case, meeting the parties individually, getting them together for a joint session, what happened, how did you apply the model and use your skills, and what was the outcome. So very interested to hear about the breadth of work and the breadth of application that people have here today, all of you. It's about 20, nearly 30 of you on today, and to hear about cases and case material. If you've got a question for me, if you've got a question for your peers, that's also a very interesting thing to do. And most importantly, what do you learn? What learning, development, insights do you take away from doing the case? And do you have a question as well? So all those kind of things. Okay, that's what we're going to do. So it's all down to you to bring something. So I'm looking for a hand. If somebody wants to pop a hand up, I will just remind you that down the bottom of your screen, you've got a little react button, um, the heart-shaped thing, and those are the reactions in there. You can put your hand up. You can do various things down there. So if you want to stick your hand up and chip in and be the first to bring something to us today, now's your chance. So we need material, so we need to hear from you. Somebody's clapping. Sam's trying out the clapping hands there. There we go. Hold on. And let's get some material on the table. So first of all, we're hearing from Sam. Hiya, Sam. Did you mean to press the hand rather than the clap? That's
Yes,
fine.
I'm
You
very
can
happy. Yes, I'm very
applaud my
happy to do
introduction
both.
if you like.
Yeah,
That's cool. Okay.
absolutely, absolutely, Mike, absolutely, Mike.
Let's hear from you then, Sam, please.
So just first off, I have been to a couple of these calls before, but I am still reasonably new to mediation. I've only had a handful of sort of joint meetings so far. I've had quite a lot more individual meetings, but for one reason or another, not suitable to progress to the joint meeting. The one thing that I'm really struggling with is getting feedback and follow up following the sessions. So I've had a couple where I've not really been convinced that they're wholly committed to the agreements that we've made, despite what they've said in the meetings. And when we've, agreed a written statement and we've got a written agreement, I've probably had sort of lukewarm, very cold receptions from, one or the other of the parties. And when I've attempted to do sort of like follow up to see how it's going, I'm not really getting anything. And in our organisation, we do ask for feedback because we put a lot of resource into the mediation service, and we obviously want to know that it's doing the job that we would hope it is. And again, not really getting a lot in terms of feedback. And I just wondered whether anyone had any advice, or whether it's just one of those things that, you've done your job and.
Okay. I think I know what your organisation is. Would you like to say for the rest of the people on here today, Sam?
Yes, I don't mind saying I work for NatWest Group, so working financial organisation, range of roles and responsibilities. A lot of our mediations are around line manager employee relationships, and some of the issues that we get there. So we do, try and encourage people to consider mediation before having to think about formal grievances and things like that.
Great. When you've got the agreement in mediation, would you say the parties feel like they own it? They came up with it, it's theirs.
Obviously that's what I'm I'm trying to get across. All the suggestions that they come up with do come from them, so I do get them to generate the solutions. I don't make any suggestions. I think it's always maybe feel like there's a little bit of an imbalance as to how enthusiastic the parties are. So I think the employees I tend to find are, wanting to get the situation resolved. Sometimes feel maybe the managers are there because they feel they have to be. And obviously we talk about that a lot, before we get to the joint meeting. But I'm never really sure that they're fully committed in the first place. Even though, we've had some good, really good conversations, they have contributed.
Yeah.
But it's just getting that kind of final bit.
Yep. Okay, sure. So we can speak quite freely about Sam's cases because we're talking about a general point here about her work within a private sector organisation tends to be managers and reports that Sam's working with. Of those that have gone to a joint meeting, and it sounds like there's quite a few that didn't, that just went to individual sessions. But what you're feeling is that despite your efforts to redress that sort of manager report power imbalance, it feels like there's a difference in the degree of commitment or investment that they're making into the process. And then when you've got that agreement, one is more on board than the other one. One's kind of indifferent, whereas the other is rather more invested or concerned that this should work. And then when you follow up, you're not getting anything back. Okay, let's hear from everybody else. There's 30 of you on now, so let's hear any thoughts, or maybe you got questions for Sam. We're sort of kicking around cases, case material, general principles here, quite a specific application that Sam's got. Any thoughts about following up and getting nothing back off the parties? Have others had a similar experience with that one, where you'd like to know whether it worked, whether the agreement held up, and you don't hear anything? Be good to hear from you. So the react button down the bottom, put your hand up, wave a flag, and we can hear from you. Okay, we've got Sonia. Yes, please.
Hi, Sam. I was just wondering, so when is it just the manager's perspective you're not getting feedback, or is it the employee, or both? The action I generally try to take is once we've made those agreements at the end of the session, I try to sort of book in my 6-week catch up at that point and almost tie it in, because diaries are so busy, aren't they? So just to say, you know, how are we both looking for such and such a dates, and book them in within sort of 24 hours of one another. So it's almost locked in at that point. So they know that it's coming, so it's not sort of unexpected. I don't know if that might help.
That's really interesting, actually, Sonia, because that's not something that we routinely do. We tend to sort of like share the agreement by email and kind of try and get confirmation back by email, but we haven't actually got into the practice of setting a date in the future for that follow-up. So I wonder if that's something that we can look to introduce.
I think quite often in the psychology of it, parties don't really want to be doing mediation. They didn't want to fall out with their colleague in the first place, but now they have. They don't want to be doing mediation. It almost feels like not quite rubbing salt in the wound, but putting in front of them something they wish was behind them.
Yeah.
So they go through the mediation. Now it can be a wonderfully cathartic and sort of liberating opportunity to have a fantastic dialogue with your colleague, or it can feel like torture.
Yeah.
Once they're done with it, they don't want to think about it again.
Yeah.
We get a very low response rate to follow-ups.
Right. Okay.
Very low. So we follow up routinely after 6 weeks. They know it's coming. We agree in the as part of the agreement. We put that in a box, write down. Like Sonia is very helpfully saying this. Thank you, Sonia. You know, so they know it's coming. It's just an email follow up with us. Do you do more than just an email, Sonia? Do you do a live follow up, like an actual session?
Yeah, I did. So again, I'm relatively new, Sam, as well. So I've only been mediating for a couple of years really, and they're few and far between. So yeah, I generally booked in just a 20-minute session, just to say hi, how you doing, how's it going? Because sometimes it's easier to communicate these things verbally, isn't it, rather than written. And that's been really well received. And, you know, some of the first cases I worked on a couple of years ago, I still see those members of the team now, you know, even in the corridor, and say, hi, how's things, you know, and we just sort of have a little update. Nothing further's come from it. But yeah, it's been quite successful.
That's great. So the two of you're part of an in-house mediation service. It's within your organization. Yeah. So that's a particular application. Some others on here I know are like freelancers, or they will supply mediation to different organizations. So it's kind of different. You don't have quite such a captive audience. You're not going to pass them in the corridor. You can't sort of quite as easily pin them down, or know where to find them if they don't turn up, sort of thing. That sounds really beastly, doesn't it? But so that's that application. But I could sort of give you a figure. I bet we get about under 20% response for follow-ups after 6 weeks. We send just a discreet email. How's it going? Has the agreement worked? Do you need any further support from us? I bet it's fewer than 1 in 5.
Okay.
That actually come back to us, which we can on a good day take as good news. We think, well, fine, you've resolved things, you've moved on. There's no need for any further support. You're having a great working life, but it may not be the case. And of course, in some applications as well, and again, there are individuals on here who are not just doing workplace mediation, but working with families, working with family setups where there's a young person at risk of homelessness. I recognise some of the faces here. Where we've got repeat sessions with the individuals. It's not just a one-off one day and then we follow up. It's like you're seeing these families month after week after day sometimes. So it's kind of a different thing. Let's hear from you, Louise, please.
Thanks, Mike. Sam, I'm interested to know when I'm normally brought in to do a mediation by the person I would call the mediation commissioner.
Right.
And so I don't, because I'm freelance and I don't know if it's different in-house. So that is the person I would also follow up with. So I do tell people, I think if people know that I'm going to be, you know, eyeballing them and saying, so how's it really going on a one-to-one basis, tends to make them pay attention a bit more. But I always go back to the mediation commissioner, whether that's the chief exec or the MD or the HR director, whatever it might be, and just say, have you seen behaviour change? Have you seen, you know, real and lasting change? Or is there still an issue, and do we need to do some follow-up, whether that is a maybe some conflict coaching with individual parties or some other form of support.
Yeah, I think probably our model is slightly different in that anybody can kind of come to us and ask for mediation, either to find out more about it or to try sort of trigger the process. And we do signpost. We've got sort of learning resources around conflict resolution that we kind of share, and we've obviously got learning around mediation and what people can expect from that, as well as having the sort of one-to-one explanation of what it involves and what would be expected of all the parties. But no, so tend not to have somebody that they need to account to, I guess, following their mediation. Yeah, that's an interesting one though.
So I love the diversity of models that we bring to these things. So with yours, Sam, you'll take self-referrals, or you'll encourage people to call you individually, not just through a manager or a referrer, and ask about mediation. And with yours, Louise, as an external, you're actually not doing the follow-up with the individuals, but going back to the referrer or the commissioner, as you're calling them, and saying, how are things? What have you noticed? And that's done on it's like a follow-up around behaviours. It's not just what people are saying, it's how they're acting and what they're doing. So the referrer then would give you an account of, yeah, they appear to be avoiding each other in meetings, or I understand they're going on holiday together. So you
Quite often one of them's left. They've
one's left, yeah, which is more kind of
all of that. Actually, maybe this isn't the organisation for me, and they've moved on quite happily. So
yeah, well, if that's giving them a clarity of decision to be able to do that, then that's an outcome, isn't it? So yeah. We've had a couple of chip-ins as well. Claire says, with a line manager and subordinate situation, there's a potential issue with the power balance, but difficult to avoid. And we drive straight into that, of course. We'll say, on the first meeting with parties, I'm aware that you're the manager, that you're the report, you're at a different sort of position in the organisation, and we will take account of that. And for now, in the room, your fellow colleagues, fellow employees of this same organisation. So you're here as colleagues, and we will do what we can to make sure everybody gets equal opportunity to speak and equal negotiating power. So we drive right into that with the addressing that power imbalance, Claire, as I'm sure you're aware. And we've got Joyce here. Joyce says, is a follow-up necessary after the parties have signed a settlement agreement and the same is countersigned by the mediator? With different sorts of agreements, Joyce, I'm wondering, given your title as a Lady Justice, whether your mediations are more around commercial, financial matters, contractual matters, where there's an exchange of value and we're precluding a court action. I'm only guessing. You might want to pop up and give us a few words about that if you would want to. It's just that you're using the term settlement agreement as well. So perhaps with a commercially orientated settlement agreement where it's more about monies being paid, goods or services being resupplied, or around something that just precludes a court hearing, that's one thing. And that's kind of a finality that then would get written into an order, or a Tomlin order. It would get written into something more formal, and then there's no follow-up. It's over. That's the end of it. Whereas, Joyce, with the kinds of things we've heard about just so far there, from Louise and Sam and other contributors, are workplace agreements around behaviours. So where it's a behavioural agreement with a workplace, it could be with a neighbourhood, could be with a family that's trying to stay together, where it's behaviours, we would check in and say, how are things? How are people behaving? Is it different? Is it better? But with a commercial or financial agreement, that's kind of the end of the mediation. And you're right, there's no need to follow that up. It's up to them as to whether they've carried out the terms of that contract, which is effectively what flows from commercial mediation. Okay, good start. Let's hear from somebody else. Who else we got to talk about a case?
Can I just add something to that?
Are you Joyce?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, I am.
Hi, I can't see you. Wait, there you are. Hi. How you doing?
Sorry, I was just going to add that in Kenya, under the court annex mediation, once the parties reach an agreement, whether it's an agreement or settlement agreement, whatever, they can now take it to court and it can be made a court order.
Yep,
That's
for sure.
yeah. And at the same time, private mediation, as long as the mediator is a court annexed mediator, then even privately, they come to an agreement or a settlement agreement. They can it can be made, and as long as the mediator is a court annexed mediator, can be brought to court and is made an order of the court. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Joyce. That's really helpful to know. So in Kenya,
Yeah.
and it's actually similar, very similar in the UK. So it would be made from the output from the mediation is a memorandum of agreement, an MOA,
Yeah.
and then the parties' representatives would then put that through the court to get it made into a court order.
Yeah.
Which is effectively a contract that can be enforced, and there would be consequences to the parties not following the terms of the contract. And so they are actually bound in law by the terms of the court order. So there's no follow-up. It's over, it's done. Thanks very much. You didn't expect to appear, and we took you by surprise.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I came in a little bit late. Sorry.
You're very welcome. How are things in Kenya?
Quite good.
Good.
Things are.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Lovely
Things
to
are
have
good.
you on. Yeah, great to have you on. Let's go to Claire O'Sullivan. Let's hear from you, please.
Thank you. What I want to say to Sam really is just human to human, which is that it is about the power imbalance that you did mention it, Mike, but it can never be removed because your survival depends on keeping that job. So you're never going to feel that freedom, that equality that we normally strive for in mediation. And so, and Sam, you might know all this already and have thought this all through, but I just wanted to say it. And if the mediation doesn't work, you've got disciplinary over your head. So you're really going to be watching your P's and Q's and what you say. So I've worked in some very unhealthy organizations where there was conflict and abuse of power, and somehow survived. And I would have been terrified to sit in a room with some of my, in brackets, superiors. So I think it's almost the hardest thing you're ever going to do is to get two open hearts, two compassionate people to hear one another when your very survival, your mortgage and your food for your kids is at the center of it, and that you could get fired, So I wonder about mediation in the workplace and how horribly hard it must be depending on the quality of the culture you're working within.
Interestingly, I found that it's probably the other way around, and that actually our colleagues, the reportees, tend to be more open and committed to the process, probably because they are genuinely looking for a resolution.
Yes.
With a couple of the cases I've had, I've found that the managers feel like it's almost a bit of a slight, or they're being questioned about their behaviours, and they may be a little bit defensive about what's happened and how they've managed situations.
Yeah.
And like I say, we've got this as one of the steps that we want people to consider before formal grievance. So, it really is in their interests to get it resolved at this stage. But I think they often feel like that, well, they've not done anything wrong, so why are they here? They're going through the motions so that they can say they've participated. Not that, it kind of counts for or against them at any stage. But I just wonder, if there is more work we can do around selling to them the benefits of actually being in this process more wholeheartedly.
Yeah, sure. Claire, your contribution is enormously valuable, and I think you're dead right. There are some organizations where power is used oppressively, where power is used to punish and to threaten, and where people wouldn't dare pipe up and say anything that could be construed as being critical of their manager, because they know they're going to get it in the neck. And even if in the mediation room, everything is tickety boo and it looks like fantastic, we're all working on a level and it's all very collaborative, that down the corridor things are going to turn, the worm's going to turn again. That's some organizations. Some other organizations, it can be, as Sam is alluding to, It can be the manager who feels battered by the report's actions and the report's continual threats of grievance and the report's withdrawal of cooperation just within the limits of what they'll get away with within the organisation.
Yes.
And the manager's going, please, you know, I want this to end. I don't want to have to come into work every day. And as I put my hand on the door handle, I know I'm going to get, I'll have 6 emails off this individual. He or she will be waiting for me with 4 things to complain about. And I'm just going to spend my whole working day dealing with them. Make it stop. And mediation gets in there and they hopefully have some great dialogue, you know, with a strong mediator, and things get resolved. And the manager and the report both go, phew, that's better.
Yeah.
They haven't got to be friends. They do need to have some kind of a positive and constructive collegiate relationship.
Yes.
And that is often the outcome we get. Also, I think it's worth mentioning just about hierarchies within very hierarchical organisations. Some government departments we've worked with, not necessarily in the UK, and with emergency services, where there's a lot to do with rank and superiority and longevity in the role. And people will come in, you know, in uniform, whichever service it is, including working with the military. And in a couple of places, we actually have introduced a protocol where they come in shirt sleeves, no matter who they are. And you're in there and you're working on a level. You are working in the mediation as colleagues. And we
Amazing.
will also mention in those hierarchies, you know, that we're fully aware of what goes on around here. And we're fully aware that when we get back out there and we put the stripes back on, things might go back to normal. But don't ignore the fact you've had this experience of actually being able to talk to each other
Yes.
as one human to another.
Yeah.
And often being quite vulnerable, you know, actually putting all of their thoughts and
Wonderful.
feelings on the table.
Mm.
So your point is extremely valuable, and I think mediation can be used in a rather cynical way in such organisations, Claire, just to tick a box,
Yeah.
so that when you get to employment tribunal, they can say, yeah, we did mediation, even though what they've done is barely what we would call mediation.
Some job.
That's it. Anybody else want to chip in? We're doing grand. We're hearing some really interesting stuff here, and quite perennial questions, perennial challenges that mediators face as well. So Joyce is reminding us about what happens in Kenya with court annex mediation. So the mediation agreement gets made into the court order. They'll usually, we call it a memorandum of understanding or a memorandum of agreement that flows from the mediation, and that's the instrument that then gets made into something that can be enforced, the court order. Similar process in the UK, actually. So yeah, but it's brilliant to hear from different places from around the world. So anybody else? Case, let's hear about your stuff. Maybe you've had referrals or situations come to you and you're not sure about whether you should take it on as mediation. I think this is something that we can overlook. It's not just about the cases we've done. Sometimes it's about the cases that we chose not to do. So perhaps you've had things come to your door or people contact you and say, I think we need mediation for this particular setup or situation. And actually having spoken to the people, you decide, no, mediation is not the right remedy. That might ring bells for people. Or you know, where actually you wish you'd not taken on a case. Julia, let's hear from you, please. Hi, Julia. Probably need to unmute, Julia.
Yep, just trying to get the technology to work. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. It'd be great if we could see you as well, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, hang on.
But it'd be quite cool because it's we're sort of having an interactive thing here today. So if we could
Can you see me now?
and hear you, that would be super.
Yay, there we go. Hello. Yeah, that definitely rings true in regard to Tate having taken one on that I wish I hadn't. So yeah, just recently, and wanted to kind of ask advice really, and as well as hear from how other people have handled this. Between mediation between 2 colleagues who don't work directly in the same team, and they don't work in the same location. One is in America and one is in the UK. Very different personalities. They've worked together for 10 years. They've always had a very inflammatory relationship, from what they've told me. I'd never really previously come across them or had anything particularly to do with either of them before. So I work in HR, but I'm a trained mediator as part of that. So I was like, well, I'm definitely impartial, don't know them, never come across them before. So having had the individual conversations with them, we went into a joint mediation. It was quite inflammatory, but at the end we came away with some key things that were, I guess, aggravating that relationship that the other parties were doing, and we came up with a list of, or they came up with a list of things that they would agree to moving out of it. And then they also asked me, but as part of that, we decided they should have some more proactive meetings. So rather than always only coming together when there was an issue, start to meet proactively about how they could move projects forward together, to have something more positive to focus on. And they asked me, they set them up every 6 weeks, and they asked me to come on for the first few. I had the first one a couple of weeks ago, which was about 2 or 3 months after the initial mediation, and it did not go well. After the first mediation, one of the parties emailed me and said, "You better not show this email to anyone, but I don't think that I thought you were biased, etc." That was the American one, so I went to the American HR. Obviously, didn't divest anything that happened in the mediation, but just want to be careful, because obviously it's a written email saying I'm not happy. In the UK, you might need to take that as a formal grievance. Just check in that we don't need to do anything there. She was like, no, it's fine. So I just went back to him and said, look, if you genuinely have concerns about how I've handled it, then you're absolutely kind of able to deal with that, and suggest you talk to your HR representative in your country. But equally, you've asked me to continue with the mediation with you, so I'm assuming that overall, not overly. But there was just a slight nod at that point that I was like, it's not very comfortable. But went into the second call. In that call, he also accused me of being biased in front of the other individual, and then made quite a personal attack towards me. So I've kind of, at the stage where I was reflecting on it, and trying to decide what to do next. I think I have to come out of the mediation. I think now I've been told twice that he doesn't think I'm being impartial. Then I don't think I continue with that. But it's how do I'm also seeing some of the behaviors directed at me that the other person is seeing. So it's how do you move it out of that mediation and then into what other process it should go into.
Okay, so your question, thank you very much, Julia. And your question is around when you've done the mediation and then what flows after that, especially where one party accuses you of bias, and then you were into sort of facilitating some ongoing proactive meetings between them for you to try and maintain. The idea, I guess, was to try and maintain a good collaborative dialogue between the parties before things went wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And and to be fair, when we first came into that second session, they both acknowledged things had been better, that they'd utilized some of the things that they'd agreed on, and actually rather than a scenario that could have gone south, they did manage to resolve it. So they were both positive, but there was one particular thing that one of the individuals wasn't happy about, and when they raised it with him in the call, then it's very defensive behavior, and very much attack is the best form of defense. And and then the attack also went to myself when I was trying to suggest different thought processes and ways of thinking about it. He takes that as you're siding with him. It's like, no, I'm asking both of you to think through and think in a different way and think about
Okay.
But it's really I don't think I continue with mediation. I don't feel personally comfortable. Equally, it's that I've seen behaviors now that I don't think are appropriate for our culture and in our workplace. So how do I move it now to closing down the mediation, but also all right, manager, if you are seeing these behaviors, then we need to take action and we need to deal with them.
Yeah, sure thing. Okay, I have thoughts. Let's hear Joyce's thoughts. So Joyce has got to hear from you, please.
Is it my turn?
Yes, let's hear from you, Joyce. Yeah, do you have something to say about Julia's situation?
Oh no, sorry.
Oh, something else. Okay,
It's something else.
Let's think about Julia's first, and then we'll come back to you afterwards, Joyce. That's fine.
Thank you.
So yeah, Julia, what I often think with bias is that we know, are you confident you weren't biased? I assume so.
Yes, I think so, and especially in that second meeting,
Yeah.
I actually had to give, from what I'd heard, I felt I actually gave quite a difficult message to the other party in regard to their thought processes and,
Yeah.
you know, taking things a bit too personally and thinking about why we're having those personal reactions to things.
Okay.
So actually, in the second meeting, more so, I thought if anyone was going to say, it would have been the
Yeah.
other way around. So
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah.
yeah,
I often I want to put it back to behaviors whenever our mediators or I, which is not that often, but when people go, you're biased, you're one-sided, I say, okay, tell me what I've said or done that led you to the conclusion that I'm biased. And quite often they struggle to tell you. And if they do name something, you say, well, actually, I did that with both of you. Somebody said to me once, you were nodding while she was speaking, therefore you were agreeing with her. Which I say, oh, come on, it's hard to say when people say you're being biased. I think sometimes what they mean is that you're not biased towards me. You're being neutral, you're being impartial, and I don't want that. I want you to be my advocate.
yes,
And it's a bit like if you think about the drama triangle as well, then they'll start to persecute you because you are not there to catch them and to wrap them up in a warm blanket and make everything okay for them. And you're
yeah,
not. Mediation is challenging. Mediation is challenging. While we offer support, we also offer that challenge to parties and say, how are you going to respond to that? Or what are you going to do about what she's saying to you? And that feels challenging. It can feel quite tough. And people can take that the wrong way and can feel that that is because it's not rescuing them, then it must be persecuting them.
yeah,
And then what they'll do is they'll get the only place left on the drama triangle then is the victim. And so what they'll do is they'll start to turn what was the anger and the ire and the hostility towards their colleague, they'll turn that on you, the mediator. That's the only other place for it to go. A bit like a lightning conductor, it looks for somewhere to go to earth. And if it can't go down through the route of the colleague, then it needs to go down through the route of the mediator. So it's an interesting thing at the end of mediations. When you see parties' behavior, sometimes it's turning on the mediator, sometimes it's going into victim, sometimes it's joyous and great and wonderful. But the other thing I would say, Julia, is that sometimes it's important, particularly when you have sort of multiple roles or multiple boundaries with people. So you're both HR and a mediator, and you've wanted to set up the voluntary confidential space for you to impartially help them have a dialogue, and then you're doing some ongoing, can I call it coaching work with them, or patient work, where you're helping them to speak better. So you kind of got yourself a multiple role there. And it might be that that's where that your challenges have come from. That I often say to people on the in-house mediators, while you're being an in-house mediator, don't be anything else, just do that. And it might be other HR colleagues who could then have facilitated discussions between the parties or taken on that role of sort of coaching them, co-coaching them. So clear about your role. Be aware it's not your fault if they turn on you, and we need to have broad shoulders as mediators.
yeah,
Recognize it is challenging, the mediation process for the parties. It's not a bed of roses. But also, if you do get accused of bias, turn it around to behaviors. What did I do or say that led you to accuse me of being biased? And you're quite often, what they say, you're doing it equally with the two of them. It's a projection. It's in their minds that you're biased. It's not you actually doing or saying anything.
fair enough. So potentially then confirm that I close down the mediation, that I don't think we continue, and the ongoing facilitation of conversations, we should look for another party to support with that.
You bet. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Keep your role clean. If mediator
Yeah.
has to be just mediator, it can't be mediator and.
Yeah. Cool. That's really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's hear from Louise, who might have thoughts about Julia's situation, and then we'll come back to Joyce. So Louise, please.
First of all, I just wanted to say, Julia, thank you for bringing that particular thorny issue. How how very courageous of you to bring that to this group. And Mike said some really. I mean, I was going to talk about the drama triangle. I think you've absolutely You've nailed that one. So firstly, I would say of course, we all have bias, don't we? It's really difficult when you're working with other individuals. You do know instinctively that, someone is more likely to behave in a way that you're likely to behave than the other party. And I find this sometimes you really have to be managing yourself all the time, don't you? Just to try and manage those, those instinctive responses that you have. So I would say don't beat yourself up about that. But also the person who is now taking against you, that's his perception is his, don't know if you mentioned gender, sorry, their perception is their reality. And so you're right, there's nowhere for you to go now. And I would even go further than that and say, I do, when I'm doing a mediation, I do frequently bring the parties back to reminding them that they have said that what they want is to restore the working relationship. And that has got to be, the driver for this. So whatever happens, however difficult it gets, the end goal is to restore the working relationship. I wonder if there's something else going on for this individual that is kind of getting in the way of restoring the working relationship. And it may well be even, and I've had a terribly difficult situation where someone actually didn't want to restore the working relationship, just wanted a safe space to be able to unleash her fury at the other party. And that was deeply uncomfortable for me and a real learning experience. But I do wonder if this is a kind of like, let's go back a stage and say, actually, is mediation now the right answer? Or is it something, does that individual need managing in a different way? Rather than, and for the other party as well, I would say, rather than keep saying, okay, we'll just keep going, a different mediator maybe, but who probably feels that they've done everything they were required to do, and it now all looks a bit nasty. But I love the drama triangle. I use the drama triangle a lot, Mike, because it's, you whiz around it and you'll get sucked into that. So it's really important to step off that. But no, I just wanted to offer some thoughts on that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And staying off the drama triangle, if you like, it's all about us having good boundaries. About being clear about our role. We're not rescuers, but we can be responsive. We're careful not to persecute or have anybody persecute, but the party has power, and we as mediators have power that the individuals give to us to put us into that role. And neither of them is victims. They have the capacity for self-determination, but it helps in mediation for them to express some vulnerability in order to try and repair the relationship. So instead of persecutor, think power. Instead of victim, think vulnerable. And instead of rescuer, think responsive. And it helps to get your head around there. But it's about holding firm boundaries, that we stay, owning our power, remaining responsive, and expressing vulnerability. It's about knowing our role as mediators and holding very tightly to the basic boundaries that we set as mediators. I'm getting near the end, but I'm going to come back to you, Joyce. You had a contribution to make, Joyce.
Yes, I'll go over it very quickly. I once had a family matter, husband and wife, and they had a daughter who had a condition, so she had to be taken to see the doctor like 3 times in a week. And the husband then started suspecting that the wife was having an affair. And before this mediation session, he had already made her pack all her things and go back to her father. So during the mediation, I had a joint session, and each one said why. And then I had a private session first with the wife. And what she disclosed to me during that private session set me thinking that, my conscience. Because during the private session, she told me, Madam, you heard what my husband said when we had the joint session. It is true, ma'am. I'm having an affair. My husband is too busy. He has no time for me, blah, blah. So I said, I asked her, he's right in suspecting you. Yes, I think he's right. There are reasons why he's suspecting, but I don't want him to know. And you told me, ma'am, that what I tell you in private session is confidential and you cannot disclose it without my permission. I said, okay. So I then had a private session with the husband. And he told me that since my wife is not likely to admit all these things I'm telling you, I've made a decision that because of the condition of our daughter, I will not file divorce at the moment because our daughter has to be taken to hospital 3 times in a week. I want to make sure that maybe in the next 2, 3, 4 years, her condition stabilizes, and then I'll decide what to do after that. So we went back. So I asked him, when we go back to open session, joint session, would you like to say that? He said, yes, I'll say it because I thought about it when you were having private session with her. I thought about it, and that's what I want to do. So when we went back to the joint session, of course, he said that, and the wife said, if that's what he's saying, I'll accept that. So if he had not accepted, if he had not come up with that, I wondered what next I was going to do, because the wife had completely told me that she is having an affair. She's completely involved with this guy. I wondered what I would have done if the things didn't end up the way they did. When the husband said, I don't really care what she's doing, I care about our daughter. She's already not in my house, she's in her father's house. I'll continue to support my daughter and see how things are in the next 3 or 4 years. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody got any thoughts about Joyce's situation? Beautifully described, Joyce. Thank you very much. Any thoughts about Joyce's dilemma? What might she have done had things not worked out that way, and had the husband not said what he said when they got back into the joint meeting? Because Joyce was sitting on this information knowing that the wife was having an affair and couldn't disclose that, of course. Had to keep that to herself. Okay. All right. Well, I'll chuck my contribution in then. What was your objective in having the mediation? What was your initial objective in doing this at all?
The mediation was so that there could be some agreement on how they were going to look after the baby, and whether the wife was going to continue living in the father's house or she wanted to come back to her marital home.
Okay.
Yeah.
All of those objectives could be achieved even without you disclosing anything you heard in private. And I think sometimes we've got to, as mediators, we've got to sort of stick to remind ourselves what the objective of the mediation is, because quite often extra information comes in, new strands develop, new avenues of possibilities are there, but we just remind ourselves, why am I doing this mediation? And I think you could fully achieve those objectives, Joyce, even in the knowledge that she's having an affair, and even with you having to walk away from that mediation room having not disclosed that, which is hard for you because you know he's sort of not going to file for divorce now, when actually if he knew she was having an affair he might well do so.
Yeah.
So that's their business. Your business is to achieve the objective of thinking about child's welfare. What are the parenting arrangements? What are the residence and access arrangements for that young person? And you did that. So remember your objective, basically. But goodness me, the stories we hear when we do mediations, fantastic. And fantastic to have you guys contributing today to our resolution roundtable. Thank you very much. I could carry on for hours, actually. If you do have an arrangement already for supervision, I'd be pleased to hear that. If you've got peer mediation, if you get together with other mediators to do something like this, if you go to somebody for supervision, I'm always advocating for case supervision, and do get an arrangement in place for yourselves to support yourselves in your professional development, in your own well-being, quite frankly, and being able to make sure you don't carry around other people's conflicts all the time. So if you don't already have an arrangement for supervision, please get something set up, even if it's just with a peer, fellow mediators that you can discuss your cases with. I think, you know, to do this for a long time, you need to look after yourselves. That's us for today. It's 10 to 1. It's sunny here in Derbyshire. I hope it is where you are. And I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you join us for other webinars that we've got coming up. We have a whole program of webinars around the corner. You can register for future webinars on the link there that's just appeared in the box. You know, we'd love to see you on some future webinars, including our conversations with a mediator that we do, resolution roundtable that we do every now and again, and webinars on specialist topics. You can also find a whole library of webinars in the archive as well if you want to look back on other topics too. So I'll finish there. I've learned not to compete with lunch. Have a great weekend. Thanks very, very much for coming today and contributing, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mike.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.